Press play, thank you. So now we are going to do exercise with paint, and we're going to look at layers and washes, okay? So for those, most of you who've already done painting, this is just a bit of a refresher, okay? I prepared a background with a bit of color pencil drawing, simply so it's easy to explore the differences between the layers and the washes. Make sense? Okay, so simply put, okay, when we're working with paint and we are not diluting our paint, we are getting a layer. We can create a layer that has a lot of paint, or we can create a layer that's got a little bit of paint. So far, easy, right? Okay, let's change the color. Acrylic and oils are opaque paint, so you know that works really, really well. However, if I'm going to take a paint, it doesn't necessarily mean that that paint is fully opaque. For example, yellows notoriously don't cover areas, okay? When I'm working with yellows, I tend to first put a white layer, okay, to cover, blend in whatever is underneath, let it dry, and then I'm applying a color of the layer on top of the white. Okay, so far so good? Okay, moving on. Obviously, we want to manipulate our paint. And if we start adding some water to our paint, that layer is going to be much less opaque, and it changes into a wash. Obviously, the more the water you're going to add, the more transparent the layer is going to be. Okay, all of that, easy art foundation, right? Let's see what's happening with a paint when you add a bit of medium. So here you cannot choose between PVA and glue because they will have a different properties. Okay. What's the answer? So medium will also change the quality of the paint. It would make it transparent. Okay. But as you can see, it looks different than washed with water. Okay. When you're washing with water, you're getting this watercolor type of effect with a bit of sort of like soft changes and maybe a little bit of pools of paint that then dry and create a certain aesthetic. When you're working with the medium to add transparency, you're preserving the texture of the brush. Okay, both of those approaches have use for us, right? Okay, so if you want to make something that is transparent and still preserve the type of the brush texture, you can always add a medium to your paint. Make sense? Let's see how is that going to look when I'm going to add more medium. So the ratio of the medium and the paint, it's much more skewed towards the medium. Okay? So yeah, so it behaves like you're diluting the tint, you're diluting the color. Okay, what are also the differences here? So there are a few technical differences that I would like you to be aware. Whenever you're using the water to dilute your acrylics, you're diluting the amount of binder in the acrylic. So that type of artwork, it's not going to be as strong and it's not going to preserve as long as if you would add the medium. Because the medium, literally, it's just a binder. So what you've got in here, it's what's in the paint, acrylic paint, without the pigment. Okay? So that means that that layer is going to stick to the surface really well because the binder is there. Is that a problem in the case of like 1 to 5 years? No. This is the problem in case of 50, 60, 70 years down the line with the artwork. So this is just something to bear in mind when you're working on your pieces. Okay? Work that is diluted with water, if you're working on the paper, that doesn't have such a massive impact because you're working basically like with watercolor. Watercolor are fragile by the design. Paper, it's a very good surface that takes the tint really well, so that's not an issue. If you're working on something that it's maybe primed with glue or primed with acrylic medium, meaning you've added the layer, that also is going to allow you to work with the washes, but you need to remember that you need that surface on things like canvas or maybe wood or other surfaces that you might be using, okay? If you are working with your binder that is medium, it's much more persistent on the surface, okay? In other words, if I was just doing an artwork to play around and it's my exercise and I'm just exploring colors, I wouldn't be bothering taking up the medium because, you know, I can get my tint, I can work on it. If I'm working for a commission piece, I will consider, is that a piece that should have a medium used? Because I don't want a collector to come back to me in 20 years and say, like, give me my money back, because everything is dropping down. Okay? Right. So, first exercise I would like you to do, it's going to be to explore the behavior of the paint depending of the medium, of the water, the ratios. Okay, just have a bit of play. Create something underneath that you can actually see. Okay. After you finish this, there's going to be a point of you now going back to your work. So we're talking here both collages, the one that you've done at home and the one that was ridiculous. And also both pieces of the playing with paper. Okay, so paper collage and sculpting with paper and trying to improve them with a bit of treatment of either medium or wash. Make sure that you take pictures before, because you want them for the sketchbook, yeah? Okay, so I'm looking on this collage and I actually look at it and thinking it's pretty nicely balanced, yes? There's a nice color balance, there's a good composition, but I have to add something to it to improve it. So I'm thinking about maybe using my diluted paint with my medium to just adding a tiny bit of refinements and difference. When we're talking about the collage, if you look on lots of people who use mixed media in the realm of collage, quite a lot of it is very layered. And adding layers of very, very thin colors, it's something that quite often gel things together. Let's imagine that this is a composition that is very unbalanced, okay? One of the tricks of the trade is, like if I need to fix something very, very quick, and the colors are just not exactly right because maybe my paper cards, the colors are clashing or something like that, I can always just give a work an overall wash, okay? What will happen here, when this dries, it will become much, much lighter, like this. But because I've got almost this filter, like on Instagram, of the paint, it brings the colors together. Okay? Obviously, with your paper collages, the improvement that you're going to do will have a much bigger scope, because at the moment there's not much of the interest here. So I can play with thick layers of color that immediately, look, if I've got a paint that it's not properly mixed, look what a kind of interesting things I can do with the surface. So add in and improve your work. Just play with it. Remember, I'm not asking here for a complete masterpiece. I'm asking for you to explore different treatments. So try to use as many different approaches as possible. I think I'm going to leave this one white for a contrast. Even those few moves of the brush, I think it brings much more interest to this piece, yeah? Is this piece now balanced visually? Is this balanced? Yes? Sure? Everyone thinks it's balanced? Exactly. It's very on to the right-hand side, absolutely. So I need a bit more interest on this side. How did you know that I was getting there? Okay, so I can...
These are very bold colors. White tends to balance it out.
Absolutely. So look, even a little treatment like this gives it a bit more. Maybe I can create a bit more refinement with the texture. Maybe I can wait for it and then give it a wash. Okay? The key thing for me is going to be that you actually have fun with it. Okay, so for the rest of the class, first obviously you need to finish your paper sculpting and paper collage because those will require time to dry. Then start with trying medium and the washes and the layers on something that is already marked somehow. And then play on both of the collages and both of the paper collages and see if you can create something interesting and something that visually feels right for you. Questions? Comments? Complaints? Fantastic. Put some music on. Who is the DJ today? So now you've got